Okay, folks, we're going to get started. Let's start with the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
We can't recall, maybe some of you guys do, whether we approved the minutes from November at our last meeting. We don't have a recording of that, although we did?
Yeah.
All right. Is that good enough for us to say we don't need to do it again? Because we did.
Tammy, I hit the record button. I guess it didn't work, huh, last time? January?
Yeah, we did. It might have worked, or something happened. It didn't record. Yeah.
Okay. Do I have a motion to approve? Did everybody get the minutes from last?
Well, I didn't do the minutes because I didn't have a meeting to watch, so I didn't see them.
Okay. Nothing to approve?
No.
Well,
I
that's
know
easy. Well, my request for motion. We have some folks here for public participation, and I thought rather than keep them here later, although I don't think it's going to be a super late meeting, we would move that up if that's all right with everyone. So with that, any public participation?
I'd like to hear the presentation of what they propose before we make a comment.
I think maybe what we can do is have an early public participation, if this is okay with everybody.
Yeah.
We just have somebody here who I'd like to get in and out. So why don't we listen to those folks in the, there you go. Oh, I'm sorry. Come on up if you'd like. And then we'll have another one after the fact. So why don't you go ahead and introduce yourself to us and tell us what...
We are Mary and Frank Tatnall from Hermitage Drive, which is adjacent to Hartford Park. That's why we are here. Mary would like to speak on that subject of the dog park.
I had, this was passed around, I hope to see, everyone see this. Ironic that I was coming here tonight and the New York Times came out with this article which is in some ways pertaining to what I had to say, but not really, but it's good. And then I also have this map, in case no one knows where Hartford Park is. I'm sure. But it also shows where the dog park is, so that you can see the problem there is, because there's no fencing there. In fact, I can fix that.
I think we have that.
I don't think we have them.
This is really an aerial view.
No, I didn't print. I just printed the one. I didn't
Oh,
print
okay,
that.
that's fine. I think we're fairly familiar with the park.
This is a picture, a random picture that was online. It wasn't very well printed, but it shows where the park is, and right above it is the driveway, Hare's Lane, that comes in. And the first thing started with me about 9 years ago. I've taken a lot of courses, mainline school, and I love this mainline school. I was on the board till about 2 years ago when I started breaking my bones. I got off the board, but I love it. I really think it's a wonderful facility for everybody. The only thing, I was taking a yoga course and just lying on the floor having a wonderful time looking and spacing out. And in the door, because it was a nice spring day, and everybody had their eyes closed, I guess walks this little, it was a little schnauzer. And it comes up to me and licks my face. It had been at the dog park, which has no fencing, and it just came across and licked my. I thought it was cute and adorable, but I started thinking about it. I said, it could have been a vicious Great Dane, or it was scary. The people were scared. I like dogs because I just got off the board at Francisville, which I've been on for very many years. So it didn't bother me, but I thought about it when I read this. You said, they can't just wander around like that. So then I was there about 10 days ago, and I go with a caregiver because since I've broken a lot of bones, they don't trust me. And so I always have a caregiver with me. So I'm right up at the garden there that Chanticleer put in, the round garden there's right in front. It's beautiful. Looking to see where the bricks are and everything. And all of a sudden, Ginger said, "Watch out, Mrs. Tatnall, here comes the dog." And he came right at me. I turned around. Now, if you're on a walker, you're mincemeat. You've had it because if he knocks into you. But she stood in between me and the dog, and it was okay. But it scared me to death. And she is a nurse, LPN from Beata, which is a, sir, she said, "I can never come over with you because we cannot live, we can't walk in a place where there is that kind of unsupervised." So it just made me think. And the other day I was there also with her, and that's before she said she wouldn't do it anymore. And there were these two gentlemen. They were older retired guys talking about a course, and they came out. There's no place to sit or stand around there, and so they were right by their car, which is right by the cars that all the kids park when they come to the, and they didn't have any idea that there were dogs around, and the dogs came up, and I just thought, all they need to do in their nice retirement is get clobbered by one of these dogs. And the dogs are not supervised at all. The people that bring them just come for social outings. They meet up with somebody and then they go off. And the dogs either play together nicely, which happens, or not, because they're all different sizes, and that's another issue. So, if you read this article that was written, I really am sympathetic to this man because, dogs carry germs. I mean, I would never have, we're fortunate enough to have a fenced-in yard, so I never had to worry about, but I would take the dogs for walks, just us together, and not get over there because, there are lots of germs transmitted by animals. But the whole thing is, you can't have a dog park that is just not in any way enclosed or something. I don't believe.
Yeah, I'd be interested in hearing what are your thoughts on what might be some good practices to institute there, or structural things to do? What do you think would be good to mitigate the situation?
I think it would be good, personally, because I have a daughter that lives outside of Atlanta, and they have a dog park there, and she said it's wonderful. They have one section fenced off for little dogs. If you have a little dog, you go in there, and they're very strict about it. And if you have a big dog, you go in there. That stuff. Yesterday we drove up there to show somebody, and there was this big dog just mauling this little dog while the parents or the people were, while the family was standing there, and it was awful.
Well, he didn't actually attack the little dog.
No, but every time the little dog came near him, if they weren't having fun.
Yeah, fencing, I think, is something that should be considered because the dog park is wide open. Those dogs could go anywhere.
They could go down the Gulf Creek Road.
Some of the owners supervise them very well, some of them don't. They're too busy socializing with other owners. And we know some people who will like that park. They're not from Radnor Township, but they come anyway, since it's open to the public. I would think some sort of minimal fencing along the road, the parking lot, not all the way down to the far side, but to separate the dog park from the public area and the area that is used by the mainline school lane people. Mainline school lane have a lot of people coming in there. The old mansion is right across 100 feet away from the dog park. We would certainly think that it would be wise that the township would consider erecting a fence along the edge of the paved area.
Sarah, you had your hand up.
As a dog owner, I once or twice took dogs, because I have little dogs, to Hartford, and it didn't work out well. Big dog didn't like my dog having a ball. But a wonderful model could be at Rolling Hill Park in Lower Merion Township. They have a fenced area for little dogs, and the people who use it pay an $8 per family fee to use the little park at Rolling Hill. And it's big, and it's got fencing and then wires, so it might be a very good example. I had a dog who loved to run away, and She ran away all the way to King of Prussia Road on me one day, out of Hartford. And I have for years, so I don't take my dogs there. I think you have to fence them. It's better for the dogs, it's better for the people, it's better for safety. And now that Kreuzberg Mainline Center, school night is just running courses all the time. It's better for them too.
Is the $8 fee a yearly fee?
It's a yearly fee. You pay $8 a year, and you have a tag that you show to go into it. And people do it on an honor system, and it has trees. It's a lovely big area. So maybe if one of you went and looked at it, you would see how Lower Merion handled it.
Where is that?
Rolling Hill Park is, thinking of the name of the road, it goes off of Youngsford Road out of Gladwin. So if you go from where the A&P was.
Waverly?
No, it's
Waverly?
below Waverly. And
River Road?
no,
River Road?
that's at the bottom. It's the road that goes down there.
Probably on their township.
It's on the right-hand side, and you go up a driveway very much like Kreuzberg. And it was very, very popular. They had a big area for big dogs and an area for little dogs.
It's still there.
Rose
Yes.
Glen Park,
What?
Rose Glen Road.
It's Rose
Rose
Glen
Glen.
Road is what you go
Mary,
down to.
I'll make a point to go.
Good, thanks. Yeah.
We use Hartford Park all the time with our dogs. I'm aware of what you're concerned about. Yeah.
Yeah, and I've had.
We've had small dogs, medium dogs, and a large dog now, so.
Maybe they should have a medium dog section.
And there's also a model in Haverford Township, their new,
At the crack. Yeah.
Really?
the new development, small dog, large dog,
At the
fenced
preserve.
off, yes. So,
Have we ever,
the preserve, yes, that was called?
Yeah,
have
for
we
preserve,
ever-
yeah.
have we ever considered that, or has this
We
come up
have
before
considered
at Harvard?
fencing, it's come up. We've had discussions with the Hartford Park Dog Club and Mainline School Night, probably about 2-3 years ago. We talked about fencing, and for whatever reason, it didn't happen. But I know that part of the problem is when folks arrive at the park, they let their dogs out in the parking lot.
Immediately, yeah.
Like, that is the biggest issue.
That's dangerous for the dogs,
So
too.
even if there is a fence there, I would just, think about how would we, try to regulate people from, to wait until they actually get inside the fenced area before they
Change
let
their,
their dog
you have to
out
change
of the
their
car,
behavior.
or once
Yeah,
they,
have
usually
the
they get out of
signage.
the car, they pull the leash off and the dog
Maybe you
goes
could,
where the dog's going, all
at
right?
the very end of the driveway, you used to have a path you could walk through to the train station whenever there was that. Harris
Yeah,
Lane.
I know we're working on
Yeah,
a
but
trail
anyway,
for there
you
as
could-
well.
Well, there is no trail now, and it's all blocked off because they've developed there, but you can,
There will be one soon.
so we come to any, I was thinking you could put a gate in front of that, and then the people that are going to the park go through the gate, and then they'll be sort of encapsulated.
The problem is that people park all along, like all the way up. So when you drive up, you get to the top of the hill, you have people who are already starting to park there.
Well, we did say, must keep your dog on leash and.
Yeah, signage.
It's changing,
and
it's
at least-
changing
it-
the
and
policy, the culture.
And
we're gonna
some-
need signage, we're gonna need probably some immediate, I don't
Some
wanna say
effort to-
policing, but
Yeah, I was gonna say
somewhat of
enforcement, at least in the
presence
early
there to
days
enforce
until,
it.
yeah, so the message gets delivered. Didn't we have something like this come up? I mean, we've had dogs issues on Parks and Rec for 20 years or more. But didn't we have a similar situation over at Friends of Radnor Trails Park, that we put a fence just
We
to
did.
sort of,
Create
not around the
separation.
entire park, but just where the obvious, traffic was with
Yes.
dogs approaching people who were parking and just trying to get on the trail to walk. And that, I don't know, I don't, have we had any complaints or anything since then?
We still have a consistent amount of
Yeah.
situations that come up between, it's between dogs,
Yeah.
between people and dogs, between kids and dogs.
Yeah. Yeah, we have a problem at Skunk Hollow too. I mean, I have to
We
say.
do.
There
It
are-
is a fairly, if you were to bottle the complaints that come in the most to the department, they're ones that are circled around dogs.
Yeah, we've talked about the dog.
And not so much the dog cleanup, although that's a big piece too, but a lot of it is the interaction, the
Yeah.
adverse interaction with dogs.
We've spoken with Wendy Greenfield, the executive director of Mainline School Night. She's well aware of the situation as it relates after her students that are at some risk.
Yeah, but the other day I was over there, and when I was walking around, and a girl came out the front door with a leash and a dog on it, so I don't think the mainline school is very strict with the dog park.
Maybe the thing we could do is maybe we could have someone on this board, maybe, I know that's your park that you steward, Bill, maybe we get together and we have a meeting with, you know, the Hartford Park Dog Club, a representative from there. You know, we could meet with Wendy from Mainline School Night. Maybe Ms. Tatnall, you could participate in that as well. And we could have that discussion and figure out a good solution.
Is there a volunteer group that supervises that park?
There's I wouldn't say their job is to supervise the park, but they participate in the park, and I know they organize the memberships of the park. That's Cindy Spurtle, so we could definitely include her within that as well.
So there's like a dog version of a book club over there, sort of a unofficial, I mean, not.
Yes, we don't
Not
oversee
township
it. Yeah, it's
sanctioned
not
or
a
anything.
township, like, we don't oversee
Yeah,
it, but
yeah,
they, I
right.
know they take monies to fund doggy bags and
Yeah,
signage
okay.
and
Well, I would definitely
items
include
relative to
them
the park,
in the
so
discussion.
absolutely.
Yeah.
And I know Cindy's real,
Yeah,
she
yeah.
shows a lot of leadership in regards to that within the community, so she can participate in that.
Anything else from the board on that? Comments from anybody?
So I had real quick, I had two small dogs, and I would go there, this was 10 years ago, and the big thing that I noticed about, the park is that you need an area for small dogs, because they will get trampled, kids will get trampled. You don't have to be a Great Dane, you can be a German Shepherd or a Lab, and if they're coming right at you, they're going to take your knees out, and it's a hill, and you're going to roll down that hill. So I agree, fencing is definitely a must, and then maybe you fence it for something for a small dog as well. And then that's something that if you want to suggest to the board, hopefully we can see about getting money in the budget for that, because it's much needed. I haven't been back with my new dog, but who's now 10. So, because he's too small, and you know, if he gets in a fight with a Great Dane, or I've seen people with wolfhounds there, which are twice the size of a Great Dane. It's not really a fight. So it's important to definitely get a fence in there. So I would agree that you do it. Then you have the creek in the back where the dogs go to, so you kind of want to limit that too, because then they come back and they're all muddy.
Tammy, should we, I'm trying to think procedurally or chronologically how to do this, should we let you guys, whoever you're going to get together, meet and talk, and then maybe a report back, and then maybe come up with a recommendation to the commissioners?
Yeah,
or
I would
something?
think a meeting at the park.
Yeah, I'll help you coordinate,
would
I'll
work.
contact these folks and we can coordinate a meeting with them. So that's if you'd like to attend as well.
And I think
And
we'd like-
get the feedback and,
Yeah.
you know, so we all know we're coming from the same positions. Okay.
We can ask
Good.
Commissioner Booker to join us as well, since that's his board.
Okay.
Yeah, that's a good idea.
And I know he's aware of some of the future improvements at the park.
If you want to, we live right there, right on Hermitage Drive, which is right there. You can meet at my house if you wanted to. Because I don't know where we can meet there, because
Possibly mainline.
I thought we'd be right at main line.
If, you know, if
See
there's
if
flash in
the
the tent.
I want to be
night school
there
could open up
and
or
see
not?
and look at it hands-on.
Yeah.
I think that's the
They
best way.
may have, you know, 1 hour on a Tuesday or something, maybe they have an open room, an open classroom, and that way
They
you'd be
probably
right there.
So if you allow
Be
a few
convenient for
weeks
them
to get all the parties together, I'm happy to facilitate the meeting. Okay?
Well, I'm sure Wendy would, she's well aware of this.
Sure.
She'll be willing to.
Yeah,
assist.
yeah.
We work well together.
Good.
Okay. Anything else on that particular topic? Thank you for coming out and informing us on this. Hopefully we'll come up with a solution that works for everybody.
Thank you.
Yeah, we didn't mean to tell you, this just happened to come out.
I know the time, my husband said this to me
Good timing,
about, you know, a couple of days ago, and I couldn't believe the timing. It's a good article. All right.
Sam, you might be interested in this.
We'll have
Unless you've already seen it.
a second public participation.
Because I read the times online. I don't like
But right now, I want to get back to some of our regularly scheduled stuff.
Thank you for this.
So that would be recreation parks project updates. Tammy?
I can go into the recreation report. January, I'll talk about some of the highlights. First of all, I just want to thank Chris Campbell just for the time and working with you as chair for the years that you served. I didn't get a chance to thank you in January, so
My pleasure working with
I know we had a lot of good conversations and a lot of good topics throughout those years, so thank you. And I look forward to working with Bill and Mary as the time goes on here.
Thanks, Tammy.
You're welcome. So January for the recreation department's been really busy, and early February we've been really productive. We've had a lot of really successful programs that have been going on. You have my report. I just want to highlight some of those because our numbers have really been off the charts this year, which is really a positive indication of kids playing and having a good time and participating in recreation. Our junior soccer shots program has 28 kids in it. It's taking place at Radnor Middle School. We have a junior basketball program that's taking place at Green Elementary School. This is separate from the Radnor Youth Basketball Program. It has 62 kids that are participating in it. Our Radnor Champions, the special needs programming that we started a few years ago, has 21 kids participating in it. It's a basketball-focused program. Run by a lot of volunteers from the high school Best Buddies program and the men's and women's basketball teams at the high school. Our youth wrestling program is doing really well. 24 kids participating in that. We have a couple resident parent volunteers that run and lead up that program. Our Griffin volleyball program is doing great with 19. We're seeing higher participation in our junior and adult tennis with 31. That takes place over at Radnor Racket. The pickleball program at the RAC has had, throughout the weeks that we've been running it, a whopping almost 190 participants on a rolling basis participating in the program, so that's been widely popular. And lastly, tomorrow is actually a Staff and Service Day with the school district, and we have a wizarding program that's going to happen at this building that ties in with the theme of Harry Potter. And that's sold out with 21 participants, and Tracy and Heather are going to be heading that up. So they have a full day planned of, it's from 9 to 3, they have a full day planned of lots of different wizarding, Harry Potter related activities. Tracy had created an escape room that will actually happen in the Powys room. She's, I think, tested a lot of people throughout the building, put them through it. It has about 6 pathways in it, so sometimes folks might want to escape from the Powys room at times, but this is in a fun way. So I really want to commend them for stepping up and putting that together. There's going to be a segment on Quidditch, on potions. They're going to tie in the theme of Valentine's Day. So they're going to do some neat, educative, and creative things. And it's amazing, like our Harry Potter programming just continues to really soar. Ironically, given that the generation of Harry Potter is really much older. I think the first book came out when I graduated high school, so to see 6, 7, and 8-year-olds really taking to it obviously shows the parents' influence there, I think, in a lot of ways. So it's been popular, and it's something that we've decided to, ride along with and really endeavor. And Tracy has a lot of crafting ability, so she puts a lot of things together for that program that are pretty amazing. So maybe next month I'll be back with some pictures to show.
Quidditch program in Radnor.
We talked about it. Quidditch is a part of the program. So when we do camp over the summer, they do play Quidditch. Villanova actually does have a club team.
Oh my God.
So and I think a lot of the other local colleges do too. So it is something that we've considered. So we're real excited about that.
Hey, Tam, you mentioned pickleball over at the RAC.
Mm-hmm.
How's that floor holding up with all the basketball and pickleball and all?
Well, I was going to talk a little bit about the RAC under projects, but
Okay,
the floor is doing well.
Good.
I will say that. The floor is actually doing well. One of the things I wanted to show you was a video that Mainline Network, which is formerly Radnor Studio 21, had done to show the popularity of pickleball. So I wanted to put that up and play that for you. Hopefully my sound is going to work here. And give me a second, I might need to restart it. Of course it's not. good interview with some of the folks in the community who've been playing. Not sure, we just tested it out earlier today.
Not yet.
Oh, you know what? Maybe it's a soundbar issue.
Some places will play it.
Right, yeah.
All right, I'm gonna back it up if you don't mind.
Yeah.
We're at Radnor Activity Center at Sulpizio Gymnasium, right here in downtown Wayne. This is basically a gymnasium space that we lease from Radnor Township School District. It's a lease that we engaged in back in 2006, 2007. And today we have a pickleball program that's going on with our adult population. They play a few days a week. It's a program that we've been running since back in the spring of 2015, something that's really been growing in popularity. It's kind of a hybrid between ping pong, paddleball, tennis, and badminton. So there's a lot of things that are kind of going on at once, but it's basically tennis really being played with a different scoring system that's specific to pickleball.
One game is 11 points. You win. In most cases, you win by 1, so you can win 11-10. Some places will play that you have to win by 2 points, but it depends on how many people are waiting to play. You alternate serves, so you start serving on one side and you score by telling the score and then referring to yourself as either 1 or 2. Because both players will serve on a turn. So if I start serving and we miss the point, then my partner gets to serve. And then if he misses his point, then the other side gets to serve. And the ball should be mostly like tennis. Hit the ground, one bounce, and that's it. Now there is an area about 6 feet on each side of the net that you can't step in unless the ball bounces in there first. And that's called the kitchen. You're not allowed to go in the kitchen unless the ball bounces in there first.
The kitchen.
There is volley. The reason for that is that you're far enough away from the net that you can't dominate a game by playing right up against the net, as you might in tennis. You get points only when you're serving. And otherwise, it's very much like tennis and ping pong, I guess people compare it to also.
The skills are transferable, and a lot of tennis players who are coming in are like thrilled to find out that they could be good very fast in pickleball. The other group that is serving are seniors who are not running as fast, jumping as high, and it's great exercise, very good socially, very nice people, always saying good shot, and sitting down and talking about their children or their careers they had or where they vacation. So it's a very social activity. The last thing that's good about pickleball to me is that when you have injuries like joint replacements, it's hard to cover the tennis court, but it's very easy to cover the pickleball court. So that makes a difference when people thought, oh, my career is over in racket sports, but it's not when you get to pickleball. And you can play singles or doubles.
It's probably not as stressful as other sports. You know, I play tennis. In tennis, you're doing a little bit more running. This is less running, and it's a smaller court. My wife has never been interested in going to Florida, but 2 summers ago she said, you know, I like this pickleball so much I would go to Florida. So that opened it up for us, and she liked us down there playing pickleball. So, you know, it is more of a senior game, but all the tournaments have young kids in it also.
Pickleball actually is one of the fastest growing sports going on right now in the U.S. I think I've read some reports from the U.S. Pickleball Association that says it's grown in the last 5 years alone by over 600%, which is huge. A lot of the growth in most of the recent years has been at the younger levels. I know we're working on starting some youth programming coming on this spring and this summer. But no, it's really, it's not a retirement, older person's, type of sport. It's really something that's for everyone. Again, I think it, kind of started and became more popular in some retirement communities, so it has a little bit of that branding, but I think we see the sport now trickling down into a lot of the younger ages. Believe it or not, there's competitive pickleball that goes on all across the world internationally, and it's really played by all ages.
There are a number of professional tournaments. 2 big ones down in Naples, Florida in April. Is a huge tournament. East Naples Park has 54 courts. At least they did last year. They were building more. So they play there at a big tournament in April, and then in November, the Indian Wells Tennis Garden, where they have a big tennis tournament, professional tennis tournament, there in March. they repaint all their tennis courts and turn them into pickleball courts for November, and have a huge tournament there. And then as soon as that tournament's over, they repaint the lines for tennis again. So there are a number of big tournaments, and there are a lot of local tournaments too. Radnor Youth Club in Concordville has tournaments. Green Valley up in Plymouth White Marsh has tournaments. And then there are the senior games every year, the Delaware County Senior Game, Montgomery County Senior Game. So there's a lot of tournaments if you're interested in that.
We have some players just recently that played in a big tournament in Florida. And two of our players won a bronze medal, and one of our players won a silver medal in a singles tournament. So some of our guys, although we're not professional, I don't know if there's money. There may be money in some of these tournaments, but mostly it's for fun. We all know each other. If somebody new comes in, they're welcome to play. We have a new guy here this morning that hasn't been here before. So we get them to sign up and put them on the court. As I say, it's social. I don't think people go home and say, gee, I won 3 games and lost 4 games or whatever. I personally don't even think about that once I'm out of here.
As a department, with our recreation department at the township, we try to be forward-thinking. We're always trying to understand what's going on in the field, learn about the trends that are happening nationwide, learn about the things and the vibe that's going on in our community. What are the recreational, programming features, event features, things that people are grabbing towards, and find ways to take advantage of those. For us, if you're just staying status quo, you're going backwards. So we're always trying to think forward, think about how we can bring great things to the community.
It's a nice video.
Very cool. They did a good job.
Yeah, good video.
We've been really fortunate with Mainline Network and Vince Celli. They come out to really a lot of the programs and a lot of the events. So we see a lot of them, and they do some really good editing and coverage of our programs. A couple of other quick things. In January, we had the Mother-Son Superhero Challenge event over at Eastern University. That was a new location for this event. It was led by Tracy, myself, and Lizette from our department. We ran the event. It was sold out with 60 mothers and sons. And we had an awesome day, an awesome health and wellness day of lots of activities at the gym over there at Eastern. There's some information up on the website about that event if you want to take a look at it. And there's a picture review of some of the activities that went on. We also, and I'll just touch real quick on the daddy-daughter dance that we had in early February. Actually, last Friday we had it. Another sold-out event for us. We had it over at the Inn at Villanova this year, so we moved from the Radnor Hotel over to the Inn at Villanova. We had a tremendous experience. We were actually able to accommodate another 100 guests at the event because they have a larger ballroom space. We, in the past, have sold that event out many years at 200. This year we sold it out at about 300. And it sold out in 15 minutes. It actually crashed our entire system, the online registration system, and there were some technical issues, but we were actually able to get everybody registered, and it was a 15-minute sellout. It was quite amazing. And on Friday night, a lot of the feedback, getting to speak with folks anecdotally and hear all the great things about the event. So everybody was happy. Very exciting for us, and I think we're going to probably look forward to getting back to the Inn at Villanova perhaps next year too. And then lastly, our recreation brochure for spring and summer. We're working on that and working on all the upcoming spring programs and the camps for the summer. So that should be out in about another month and a half. So we'll have that available to you most likely next month. So with that, if you have any questions, I'd be happy to answer them. Oh, you know what? I do have a couple more things. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
I just wanted to make a couple announcements. First of all, tomorrow, I know I sent an email out about this. We have, it's the 260th birthday of Bishop Richard Allen, who's the namesake of the park over on Brook Street. So I wanted to invite everybody to come over to that. It's a wreath-laying ceremony. It'll take place at 11:30 a.m. if you're not doing anything tomorrow. It's Valentine's Day. I know it's going to be cold. I think it's going to be 30 tomorrow, but it's a short ceremony. It goes by pretty quickly, so it's a nice way to honor Bishop Richard Allen. And then lastly, the 10th annual Spring Extravaganza is going to take place again at Villanova University on Sunday, March 29th, so we're gearing up for that.
Anything?
That's it.
is Board of Commissioners report. What do you got for us?
Nothing yet, but what I will say is that if you want that feedback that was given about the fencing, that's definitely something that I think is long overdue. So I can bring that to the manager, but if you can bring that as well,
Yeah,
that's
we
helpful.
can sort of parallel track it, but we'll bring in, we'll do something more formally after we do some information out and Tammy and we'll talk.
Sean, the Willows Park Preserve Group is supposed to provide, I believe, a biannual report to the Board of Commissioners on their activities and progress, et cetera. Has that been done to the best of your knowledge?
So I don't know. If we have board members.
I think there's something.
They're presenting at the next Board of Commissioners meeting.
Yeah, yeah.
Gotcha.
Yeah, it's sometime in February, yeah.
Is it inappropriate, Mayor, to say that? Are you on the?
Yeah, I was gonna make the announcement. I've just been added to, this is so weird.
Sorry to out you on this, but just to make it.
I was asked to be on the board, and after giving it a lot of thought, I decided, okay, so if we do have, issues involving making decisions or recommendations, what have you, on Willows Park Preserve, I will recuse myself, but in the meantime, if we're just chatting, I can be involved, and I can also keep you in the loop.
And I think that makes sense at this point, because
Yeah.
Willows is a pretty important staple of Radnor.
Yeah.
It's great that you can act in both functions as well.
Yeah,
As kind of being able to separate yourself.
I certainly won't act on
Sure.
anything that, sure, I'll let there be a conflict of interest that manifests itself in some sort of official action, so. And if anybody sees me slipping into that, just sort of kick me under the table. It won't be intentional, it'll just be because, whatever. School board.
No report.
Okay, any other departments? Like we don't have Claire here to report on the shade tree. Any other liaisons we have?
I think that's it.
That's it? Okay, brings us up to old business. Park projects update?
Sure. So right now, Emlyn Tunnel Park, the construction of the comfort station is moving along. As a matter of fact, yesterday the roof trusses were laid into place on the building. So as of right now, all that remains is the electrical and the plumbing internally, along with some of the site work with the walkways. And then of course, sidewalk accessibility and the parking lot repairs. So the project's actually moving along on schedule. I'm thrilled to say that about a project, because I don't think I've ever been able to say that. So that's exciting, but now that I've said it, I'm sure that it's jinxed.
Well,
but
we've had a great one. We've had a very favorable
we
winter.
have. We certainly have. I mean, they've had some setbacks because of rain, but nothing that has been too significant to throw them off schedule. So what we're doing is we're working through the process there. I think the building at this point is really about 65% completed. And I know the anticipated wrap-up of the building, if it stays on schedule, will be the end of March, which is really good. Ironically, we could be at an early start for the spring season, so we are trying to work out some alternatives to how we'll access the site from an ingress-egress standpoint with regards to user groups. So we recognize there might be some overlap there once our community sports groups are actually given the authorization to get on the fields. The parking lot's still going to remain closed and, not accessible. So I've been trying to meet with some of the adjacent owners, specifically the Radnor House, to see if we could have access from our pedestrian entrance through their parking lot. So I'm kind of waiting for some feedback on that, because it'd be nice to be able to at least let some of the parents to come through on that end and drop their kids off so that they can come through safely while they, park and maybe access some different areas, because it's really tight. There's not a lot of parking options, unfortunately, on Garrett Avenue. So I was trying to work with the Chetwynd, trying to work with 1022, the building up the street, to see if we can, work out some alternative parking, if in fact we need it, which it's kind of looking that way, because it is looking like we might have an early spring.
Tammy, do you mind if I'm taking a lot of liberties here with public participation, but I know we have some people who wanted to speak to the issue, some of the issues about Emlyn Tunnel, and they're here, and I'd just as soon get them out of here quickly too. Does anybody have any issue with me letting them go ahead and jump in right now?
I think they want to hear the presentation
Yeah.
from Little League.
Oh, okay, okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
So I'll try to be quick. So Warren, Philippone, and O'Connor Park, we're working on the closeout and the punch list over there. There's some items that we have to address in the spring. The plan is for a grand reopening, potentially, the tie-in with the concert, the annual concert that we do over there. So that'll happen in July. And the thought there is that we have a captivating group of folks together, so why not celebrate when we have that occurring? So that's the game plan as of right now. So stay tuned for more information on that. Fenimore Woods, we're still working with our consultants to put together the final design and the plan. The trees, the plan for the tree removals and the tree replacements are going to go before the Shade Tree Committee in either March or April. So that's another step as part of that process that is going to likely kind of set the project back. And as of right now, it looks like we might be lining up more towards fall to go to bid. So I'll keep you posted on that as we move forward. And that timing actually works out a lot better anyways. We'll have a chance at more favorable, we'll say like cost bidding at that point. Could work to our advantage to wait. Lastly, I just wanted to report on the rack. We kind of touched a little bit on this, Chris, I know whenever you had brought it up. The floor, we've been working to evaluate the floor as we're at the building pretty frequently at this point with a lot of live reprogramming that's going on. Everything looks really good with the floor right now. It appears to be free of any imperfections. We're not seeing the polyball protrusion that we had seen before, so it looks good. We're keeping a watch on it. There's some separation in between some of the boards, some of the flooring boards, so we're going to monitor that and look at that a little bit more closely, but nothing seems to be imminent. We did have on January 25th, it was a very, very rainy day. We had water intrusion coming in on the east wall above the windows, which was not significant, but there's actually significant work that does need to be done on the building. So I don't know if you recall, but a couple months ago, we had a significant amount of sealant repairs done around the windows. We had a lot of metal to metal, metal to glass, metal to masonry joints repaired in terms of basically sealing those areas to try and create some closures. So the way it turned out, I guess, when we had this evaluated, what's happening is at the top of the building, because our contractors looked at it from the roof this time instead of just doing it from the lift at the building height, what's happening is there's a lot of breakdown in terms of the masonry and the bricks. So it's significant pointing that needs to be done. So we're seeing a lot of deterioration in the brickwork around the building. So I know we're in the process of getting some proposals on what that would look like, and some of those are pretty steep in terms of what that repair would be. So I know that's something that we have looming ahead of us that we're going to have to take a close look at. And really what's happening is it's when we get the torrential downpours that just go for hours on end and that are kind of blowing sideways from the east to the west. And this is consistent with a lot of the feedback that we had received when we had roof inspections. It's on the perimeter, there's a parapet wall, which is like a 32 to 36 inch wall around the top of the building, and there's a lot of brick and masonry that's just breaking down. It's in very, very poor condition.
Tammy, how old is the building?
I believe it was built in 1939.
Okay.
So we're going to continue to monitor that, and we're going to continue to work with the commissioners and determine what our plan is going to be moving forward with regards to the building.
I seem to remember some conversation from a previous township manager about maybe turning that building back to the school district and walking away from the lease, et cetera. Was there any more to be made of that, or are we in good stead right now with the school district and us in terms of township, in terms of what our approach to that building is going to be?
I think our approach has been is that we were going to work together on a future solution, that the township would continue to operate underneath the auspices of the lease. So at this point, I think there's been an amicable commitment to determine what the future holds on the long-term plan, recognizing that there's a lot of work that's needed on the building, and recognizing that there is a community need to have a recreation space. And then the only other thing I had was in March, I think we want to take an opportunity to have Steve Norsini, who is the township engineer, attend this meeting and give an update on all the trail projects to sort of weave all those together so we can look at how those are coming to fruition, funding, grant statuses, things like that. So I think it's important. I know it's something that has been somewhat disjointed in, how we have had updates, in regards to the trail projects. So I've asked Steve, who's the township's point of contact with regards to those projects, to come. So hopefully in March or April we'll get that and we'll have some more detail.
I have a quick question. In Boca Raton, when they have those concerts, where are they actually located at? I mean, I've never been to one, obviously, but where's the actual concert taking place at?
It takes place on the basketball court, right at the park.
Oh, okay.
So the band
sets
up on the basketball court, and then plays. I guess it would be to the south, which is up towards where the new pickleball court is, which is usually where people sit on that area outside of the comfort station and on the grass.
Okay.
Anything else on that? Move on to new business. I'm going to do another flip around here, if it's okay with everybody, and talk about Radnor Wayne Little League and listen to their presentation, and then we'll talk about the outdoor recreation article and what the township wants us to do about that. So that's okay.
I don't know what just happened. I don't think it's meant to be, Tom. This is bizarre.
Gremlins?
I'm sorry.
Oh, that doesn't look good.
Looks like a connection issue.
Ooh, yeah.
Could be me bumping into it. I'm always the employee with all the technical issues. There we go.
Yeah.
There we go.
Smooth.
Can work.
Thank you. Tom, I'm going to bring this up for you if that's okay.
That's great, thank you. Okay, so it looks like we're rolling. I am Tom McWilliams, president of Radnor Wayne Little
Can
League.
you come up here so we can probably get better audio?
This work? Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you. So I first want to thank everybody for hearing us today. We had asked for some time. We recently had a board meeting and discussed a variety of projects that we would hope for. Some of them are temporary, some of them are permanent, some of them are more baked, some of them, as you'll find out, are far less baked. We wanted to get to speak to the Parks Board. I know there have been concerns in the past on the different sports organizations asking for things kind of early enough in our process. We didn't want to get too far down the road for a variety of reasons. Once we get into asking to get drawings done and stuff, that's money we really don't have to spend if it's not something that we're going to move forward with. All of the things I'm going to talk about today are designed to increase usability and improve our offerings. We're in the advantageous spot this year where our enrollment is up for the first time in a couple years. That is great news for us. We're getting a lot of positive comments about the new comfort station going in at Tennell. I think that's attracting attention. So people are excited to come back and play softball and baseball again. Hopefully the Phillies will be good and that interest will be maintained through next year. We're also with these projects looking to, as we have done in the past, try to equalize and provide as much equity as we can as far as our amenities and facilities for softball and baseball. And we've also, during our lengthy last board meeting, tried as best we could with the plans, at least even the not so baked ones, that we would try to minimize or eliminate any limitations on aesthetics of the park, neighborhood views, our neighbors' enjoyment of the parks, or other uses of the parks by other sports, etc. So I would welcome everyone to jump in at any time. It may make the most sense. I've kind of structured this on a park-by-park basis, so maybe I'll just pause after I discuss each park if people have questions or things they want to discuss. So the first park, I mentioned I'll try to tell you whether we're asking for something that would be temporary and whether this is a current request or kind of a in the future exploratory request. First park I'd like to talk about is Odoricio Park. So this is where our older boys teams play. It is Radnor Wayne Little League's full-size field, 60-foot pitching mound and 90-foot bases. Typical of this age of play for most facilities that our township goes out and plays at, we would have various things there, including bullpens and batting cages. We do have bullpens. We do not have batting cages at Odoricio Park. We're going to have, as I said, some enhanced enrollment this year, so we may have up to 10 teams at various levels, including American Legion, 18 years old and under playing at this field. And what we'd like to do for those teams for both practices and games and for our opponents is do fully removable batting cages akin to the ones that we have historically done at Warren Philippone and at Tunnell Park. So they're basically a snap and lock system that we put up and then we take them down at the end of the season. We tried to think through, as we discussed this to improve the usability for our older boys, what might be the best spots to put them. So you'll see the 3 blue arrows there. There's a hill that's sort of outlined, and you'll see it in one of the subsequent pictures, that the hill dips down from the right field line all the way around to the left center field. So right field is on this side of the drawing for those who aren't as into baseball as I am. Left center field is where the second arrow, the upper arrow to the left would be. So that is all down a hill. Those first 2 arrows, the one in the tree line and the one at center field, the one at center field is at the base of the hill on flat ground. You can see there are no residences and there's a thick tree line there. The one to the left of that is a little bit outside the bottom of the hill and is underneath most of the trees there, but still in the tree line. Those are both flat areas that we thought cages might be appropriate and really wouldn't be visible to anybody. My wife says it'll be a little bit of a hike for the players, but we're okay with that as long as we put it in a good spot for the neighborhood. The last arrow is the one at the bottom there. That is an area that looks like an old driveway area. It is flat. It does have a slope to it. We could put cages there, although I think our preference would probably be one of the 2 spots on the upper part of the diagram, those arrows. So part of what we wanted to ask of the board today, as I say, this is a more current, immediate request of ours that would greatly improve the usability of the park. These are just proposals of where we thought we could do batting cages that would be least impactful to the neighborhood, wouldn't interfere with the soccer pitch, which is in the entirety of left and center field. And what you can't see, Tammy, if you wouldn't mind going to the next picture. So this is standing on top of the hill in center field looking down. You can see I've put those 2 arrows to the right and then the one in the center. Those are the same 2 arrows that you saw in the diagram in center field and left center field. You can see some soccer equipment up there, but those are both relatively flat areas, and as you can see kind of looking back into the tree line there, there's really not too much there. We wouldn't be interfering with anything and we wouldn't have to concern ourselves with safety issues. So as far as Odoricio Park, those would be, we would ask to be allowed to put cages there. Those would be the best areas that we could come up with. But again, we're not really married to anything. It's more of a hope that we can improve the usability of the park for both us and our opponents and for our kids at practice time.
Just one comment I have is a few years ago, the American Legion did come to this board and request to install temporary batting cages at Odoricio Park, which we had started to move forward at that point. I know we went as far as actually allocating, I think it was along the third baseline way out in left field. I know that the American Legion had worked with Mark Dominic, our previous park supervisor, but the project just never came to fruition. I don't know if it was they just didn't fundraise for the entire setup that they were trying to, but it did kind of go away. So it is a discussion that we have had and we've evaluated. So I just wanted to throw that into the mix I'm not sure if anyone, Mary, you might have been on this board at that point. Chris, I think you might have been as well.
I'm trying to remember.
I mean, that kind of speaks to just a quick comment that I had, which is that, I've seen batting cages set up kind of along third baseline or, that area. Is this something you considered?
In Odorizio?
Yeah.
Yes, we did. I actually,
Here, right?
so that's basically way out in the outfield. As I said, that is flat ground and we could do it there. It's a sloped area. Tammy, the next picture shows it a little better. See the arrow to the left, how that hill slopes up? Now it is very flat. We could certainly do cages there. Either the batter or the pitcher would be downhill, but that's not the end of the world, as I say. We would have batting cages and a place to throw batting practice. As far as immediately along the third baseline, the problem we run into is the hill comes down at a very oblique angle and is only about 20 feet from the foul line in foul territory. So if we tried to wedge it in there, we'd probably have fielders.
Right.
We wouldn't want to have fielders taking the risk of them running into the batting cage during a game because they don't know that it's there.
Yeah.
And there also is beyond in left field a bullpen. When it starts to finally open up, there's a bullpen out there that we wouldn't want to impede, and then right behind that is that slope.
Got it. Okay.
Just 2 comments or observations. So what were I guess, could you reach out to the neighbors and say, hey, we're looking at doing this? Are there any objections? I always think that's the best way. I don't know if there were any objections a couple of years ago
We
when you
worked
looked
with
at
the
it.
neighbors. There were
Okay.
specific neighbors on the perimeter.
And
that
were
we
there
worked
any
with.
objections?
No,
or-
and that's where they arrived at that spot, so I think we can revisit that.
Okay, and then the question as well is, who's responsible for these cages? If there's a windstorm, if there's, we spoke about that, you brought that up. I know that there's been some issues at Edmonton Park of unfortunately vandalism, stuff like that, and it's upsetting all around, but at the end of the day, we don't want, a cage in 2 pieces, but at the same time, it's your cage, you gotta get it back up and all that other stuff. So those would be my 2 observations or concerns regarding this.
And absolutely, we were happy. We would ask for your help, Tammy, in getting in touch with the neighbors. Part of the reason we're here tonight is we want to have those discussions. And on the second point, Sean, as far as caring for the cages, we do. I mean, Emlenton L, the unfortunate stuff that's happened there, we try to get over there and reset them to the extent we need new equipment, we buy it. And we would certainly plan on doing the same thing here.
Tom, I'm going to tag on to Sean's comment because I think it's a very good one. And I was very involved with Radnor League for a number of years as well. And my experience is that a lot of people want activities for their children, but not everybody wants to be involved to help with those activities. And so my question is, you have batting cages at certain parks already that you do every year. And I think it's a challenge at the end of the year to have enough people to help take them all down, store them properly, have a place to store them, put them away. Now you're talking about, at least here, and I'm looking at your presentation, might be a couple other new parks where you're looking to do this. Do you really think you're going to have the volunteers to do all that manual work and take care of that properly? Because it's a great idea, but people don't really like to help. But at the beginning of the season, it's great, everybody's all in. But come July and August and September, when it's time to take them down, and there's 4 of you doing it, it just doesn't seem to happen. So that's my question.
Point well taken, Chris. My totally open and honest answer with you is for baseball, which is what Odorizio is, we won't have any problem finding volunteers to put them up and take them down. If it was softball, I do most of the softball myself, and our softball commissioners do it mostly ourselves. So that's a much more difficult issue, but that won't be the case at Odorizio. We'll have plenty of help.
Baseball, there's plenty of help. You have fall ball, you have, it is basically like it becomes very territorial of who's taking this stuff down. Everyone wants a piece to help. So the parents are at times maybe overly enthused.
They're very zealous.
Yes. Both on the field and off the field, but yeah, I don't think, at least from the Enki Park side, I don't think it, and it would translate over to that. I don't think you'll see a problem.
All right, good.
And I think we talked about it. I know, first of all, we've worked really well with Radnor League for a number of years, our department, the Parks Department, et cetera, with the township. And we've had discussion on ongoing maintenance, and I know that all the representatives within the organization, especially you, Tom, being at the helm, to developing that partnership a little bit further. You know, there's obviously a list of things that are here tonight. You know, there's some things that already exist in parks today. I think looking at that comprehensively in terms of an agreement and how we maintain these things, just so there's that understanding. You know, here's kind of what Public Works does in terms of trimming and, you know, put away, stow away, and all that, and here's what Little League's responsibilities are. So I think that's something we will want to consider depending on how these things evolve.
Yeah, I just remember painting the fence over Yankee, and there was maybe 5 people out there trying to paint that whole fence. I'm like, wait a minute, there's 500 kids in the program.
Sean references, we don't have that problem nowadays. We're
That's
fighting
good.
people off with sticks from helping, but it's great.
Yeah.
It's a good problem to
That's a
have.
good problem. Thank you.
I have one quick question that kind of piggybacks a little bit on what Chris was asking about. So when you say temporary, that's what you mean. You can take it down at the end of the season.
Yes.
So it's up during the season, and then at the end of it, it's taken down.
Yes.
Stored in your own facility?
Yes,
Yeah.
we store it. I should mention when we say the season, because American Legion plays at this field, so the Little League season ends around early July. The American Legion actually plays through the month of August.
Okay.
And then typically we start fall ball in late August or early September.
Okay.
So these would probably be up, I would guess, from late March to early April until sometime in October. And then we usually have crews kind of rove around over the course of a weekend or two and get them all down in late October.
Is there storage facilities on site here?
There is a shed on site at Odoricio, which with the help of Radnor Soccer Club, we had an extensive clean out this year. It's not huge, but it is big enough to store at least the 2 cages worth of equipment.
Great.
The batting cages won't affect the soccer fields.
No, and
They
that
want the lower levels, the flatter levels. Yeah,
that's
yeah.
we're in fact. I mean, I'm going to reach out to Tim Fisk just to make sure you can see that picture's taken today, by the way. So those I don't want to put it in a place where soccer can't get their goals back out. So
Yeah.
put them down the hill. The soccer pitch is actually up on top of the hill, but we need to allow them room to get those out of there. So if the conclusion from the neighbors in Radnor, Little League, and the Township was that we should put them back there, we would want to work with Radnor Soccer to make sure we're not blocking them from getting anything out.
Is quick question. That's still a cement platform right there by the goals, behind the soccer goals.
You mean where the old foundation
Yeah,
is?
where the old
Yeah,
foundation.
it's, the
That's
foundation's still there.
Would that in the future be looked at as being built up as a new station for your batting cages?
No, I think we would put it in the grass in front
Okay.
of that foundation that's there, because we have 18-inch basically locking hooks that go down in the ground and bite, and we put them in each leg. So we would need soft ground to nail those down into to hold it down.
Okay, and then my next thing is, in the letter, was it specifically laid out, would it be specifically laid out that it's a temporary thing for the baseball thing? Because I think, as in the past, you know, some of the people in the community would be wondering, okay, again, you know, you're doing something to Odoricio Park, but you're not addressing the whole park, you know. I just see it as, once the letter gets out there, the people are going to be coming along like they did with the bicycle thing. You know, well, we haven't addressed the park issue as a whole yet either. You know what I'm saying? I guess.
So in other words, you're saying it seems like there's selective improvements to the park.
Yeah, partial.
It's of course it's a lot more complicated than that. This is Radnor Little League. It's their doing. It's their funding.
Yeah,
It's
and I understand
not
it's
a-
the school boards
yeah,
too.
yeah.
So that's just my concern.
Yeah.
You might get a lot of feedback from them saying,
Yep.
okay, you're doing it the slick way now. You're just breaking it out in different sections, and you're still neglecting the park end of Odoricio. That's my concern. You know, someone might take it that way.
Well, I think the thing to keep in mind is that this is just temporary. You know,
Yeah,
we would
yeah.
work to identify like strict timelines so that we know when it's coming down or when it's going up, when it's coming down. I know we've done that in the past and we were Philip Home, and you know, we continue to do that here. Obviously, it doesn't apply to Enki because it's a permanent structure.
Right.
But
I'm-
no doubt that the comprehensive thought process to the park and improvements is something
Yeah.
that needs to
Yeah. I mean, I'm not trying to say anything other than you're going to have a few people that are going to come down the road, you know, and say something like that. But I just wanted to put that out there. That's all.
Yeah, I think it's good for us to have a heads up, but that's really.
Tom, you think about 2 cages?
Yeah, I think we prefer to do 2 here. I mean, we could get away with 1, 2 would be ideal. We can vary the size of the cages because it's a kit basically that you put together in 5-foot increments. We wouldn't want to go less than 35 feet just because of the size of the kids. If you've got 18-year-old boys/men, you need to be far enough away from them. But we probably would want to do something in the range of about 40 feet per cage. So we would take up about 80 foot of space. If we could only do 1 cage, we might stretch that out and do it 50 feet long instead. But yes, we'd prefer to. We good on Odorizio, okay. I'll move on. I think it might be 2 more clicks, Dan, if you wouldn't mind. North Wayne, basically, this is the exact same question. This is, again, a 60, 90-foot field. This field does not get a tremendous amount of use currently, but this year we are probably going to have to rely heavily on North Wayne Park for overflow of at least practices for our older boys teams. If we're going to have to accommodate 2 games a week for 10 teams at Odorizio, we're probably going to have to move a lot of practices to North Wayne. To that end, Little League is planning on replacing. Right now the proper safety release bases are not there, so we had discussed with Tammy putting in proper safety release bases here, and we'd also like to do a batting cage, which is really our ask here tonight. I've put an arrow again similarly to the last situation. It's basically in dead center field. There's an old fence there. You can see what I believe is the blocks from the drainage area to the left in that sort of L shape, the lighter blocks. And then there's the fence, the tree line, and then behind that is the septic tracks. So the area that we picked out here, to the right, you have some homes. To the right of this drawing, off the first base side, you have some homes. In the outfield area, you have nothing but the fence and the tracks. We thought it would be least impactful for the neighborhood to put it out there in the outfield. Our review of the park indicated that if we put it under that tree, which that tree is bare right now today, but if we put it under that tree is about 15 feet up in the air. We put it under that tree, it would have no impact on the playability of the park for the boys, because if they had hit a ball out there, it would have hit the tree anyway. So if the batting cage is under the tree, and we wouldn't have anybody in the batting cage during the game, so we would not have any sort of safety concerns if the batting cage was out there. We'd have minimal to no impact on the neighborhood, and it would basically be tucked under that tree along the SEPTA fence line there. So that was, again, nothing that we're married to, but an area that we thought was least impactful and would still give us enhanced usability. I should mention our request in relation to North Wayne Park would probably only be 1 batting cage. That area out there is very uneven, and 80 feet along that fence is a lot more space than it looks like here. This park is appreciably smaller in the outfield than Odorizio, so that would take up a lot of area, and we wouldn't want to impinge on the drainage area. Or there is a locked gate that goes under the SEPTA tracks there, which is just to the left of the arrow in the drawing that you're looking at. So we had thought maybe 1 cage here just to improve the usability for practice.
Question, how wide are the cages?
They are 12 feet wide.
So I don't think this has a neighbor impact, so I don't think you're going to need to ask the neighbors. Just a quick question, I guess, would you have a bullpen or no bullpen?
This field does not have any bullpens, and I think it would be a major undertaking to put them in.
Got it.
Again, I think our reliance on this field will be more for practice. So the hope would be we could have a pitcher on the mound pitching and not need the bullpen, and we could have infielders behind him doing infield work.
Okay.
So
This is a softball field, am I correct?
It's actually sized for baseball, but yes, it is what we would call a skinned infield with no grass in the infield. So it is variable as to the playing size. It does have a 60-foot baseball mound.
Okay.
We could certainly use it as a softball field, yes.
Okay. And where is storage? Do you have storage for?
We do not have storage on this site, so we would do what we've done for the tonneau cages, for example, this year. Last year, we had 2 sheds donated to Little League that were put at Enki Park, one of which replaced the old shed. The other one went adjacent to the concrete shed next to the comfort station. The shed that replaced the old shed, we tried to maintain it as empty so that we could store the entirety of the Emlyn Tonnell shed contents at that shed, which we've done, including the batting cages. We also have the batting cages there from Donna Lane. The hope is we would not have to store the entire contents of Emlyn Tonnell shed this coming off season, so we would take the cages from the North Wayne facility and we would store them at Enki Park. We've got 90-gallon buckets that basically we put all the poles in one bucket, we put the net in the other bucket, and then we just take a pickup truck and drive the buckets over.
Is it possible to store it in the storage at the park?
There is a storage facility there. Radnor Wayne Little League does not have access to that that I'm
I know
aware
that
of.
lacrosse and soccer
Do have access, yes.
do have access, and they do store in it. I was actually just in it in August.
Oh, okay.
And I thought there was open space in there. So maybe there's a way to
That
work
would
that
make it
out,
all
just to make
easier.
it easier so that it's not transported.
For sure.
Do you feel that you're going to be, with all the cages, that you're going to have enough storage, or would you need to build at some point at capacity at one park? Or
I think we
somewhere?
should have sufficient storage with the new storage at Emlyn Tonnell for the items that would go there, the
Okay.
batting cages and the equipment. As I say, we've in essence got one more shed at Enki than we had in years past. We've got storage at Oda Recio. As Tammy references, if we could get access to the storage here, that's we're living it up at that point. That would be great. Okay, I'll move on if it's okay to Warren Philippone. So Warren Philippone, we had come and spoken, I believe, about a year and a half ago to this board about a plan for Warren Philippone that included a practice infield. We've substantially modified the plan from the one that we proposed a year and a half ago. The reason being, it's come to our attention that this is probably going to be a much more Little League resource-intensive project than we had expected it to be. And given that, we've tried to align our proposal more with what Little League really feels we need, what we must have there, principally from a safety perspective. I know some folks in this room who've been involved in Little League over the years. That area of Warren Philippone is an accident waiting to happen. There are kids swinging bats, there are kids throwing balls, and it's willy-nilly disorganized right now. So we've eliminated the practice infield as something that we felt would not necessarily address the needs of the park. And instead, we would similarly employ batting cages.
You'll have to excuse me. Thank you.
Thank you.
I have to leave early.
We would employ batting cages, and you can see actually a temporary batting cage there under the left bottommost arrow. That black area is a temporary batting cage that we put up. We've been putting these up for years. We have a lot of wind problems at Warren Philippone, and they blow down. So along the lines of our proposal last year, what we would propose to do is put a double fence in parallel to the Warren Philippone tennis court fence with a drainage area in between and a grass-free zone in between those two fences. Our fence, Little League's fence, would protect the Township's fence at the tennis courts from damage, and we would employ along that fence line in parallel to the tennis court fence 3 large poles that would be 12 to 15 feet tall. They would serve as one side of the same hanging batting cages that we employ here at Enki Park. What we would need then 12 feet out from those fence poles would be another set of 3 fence poles from which we would hang the wires that the hanging cages would extend downward from. Our concern all along with that plan has been we don't want to have 3 exposed poles 12 feet out from the tennis courts, in essence, in the off-season when there are no cages there, for safety reasons, among other issues that we fear might arise with that. So what we would propose to do is also run a fence on the outer 12 foot from the tennis court poles in a straight line, and then enclose that fence into 2 small bullpen areas in sort of a U shape with the openings on the creek side. That's represented by the two smaller upper arrows that we're pointing down. So those would serve as the two bullpen areas. They would be immediately adjacent and use the poles from the hanging batting cages. I had said I would try to remember to do so, and I forgot here. This proposal would be a permanent structure. We would take the hanging batting cages down every year in the off season, but nevertheless the poles and the fencing would be permanent. I would probably refer to this as a combination project where we would like to do this in the near term, but we're still, in our view, in an exploratory phase whether this is the best plan and how we would go about doing it. So we wanted to come here tonight and sort of raise the flag and say this is what we're thinking, and we'd like to explore it further.
So let me just say one quick thing. And actually, coached Little League where we were at Philip Park in Cloverfield. I don't know what's the field up there. South Devon.
Yeah.
Okay. The issue that I have, and I don't know if this would help it or not, is that area gets saturated. There's like a bad drainage, or I don't know. It's what do you want to call it? It's like a stormwater. Yeah. You know, I don't know. The buffer. Okay. So would a partially permanent make that better, or is that just going to be a problem that, you know, it's just going to be an issue going forward?
Our hope is it would make it better in that the two high pole sides running parallel to the tennis courts, our intention would be, I mentioned, between the tennis court and the one high pole line, we would have a drainage area.
Okay. I'm sorry. Okay, so you would have the drainage area. I'm sorry that I missed that.
No, that's fine. And then the other fence line would also include a drainage area. Okay. So those two fence lines, and I should mention, we would not be turfing these bullpens or anything. That would just be in a separate area with basically a pitcher's mound and a home plate, and we would maintain it.
I'm sorry that I missed that.
No, okay. Sure.
How many cages would you have there, Tom?
It would just be two.
Two under one.
They would hang from, so we'd have 3 poles. The end of each cage would go on the ends of those poles, and then they would meet in the middle with a hanging divider in between. And they would hang on wires, just like the Yankee system, the new Yankee system does.
I think it would be helpful to get some kind of a mock-up, something to look at that we could really see what you're envisioning there, what would be permanent in one color, what would be taken down another color. And I also think it's important to involve the neighbors over there as well with anything we're doing. I know you're just kind of raising the flag now as something that you'd like to, you know, move along, but those are the two things that would jump out to me as being helpful.
Understood. Yeah, I should mention, thank you, Chris, that the neighbors actually were the ones who came to Little League in relation to this project, but at that point in time, it also included a practice infield with bullpens on either side. Right. But we felt if it's going to be Little League's resources, the practice infield is less useful to us to address the safety concerns. And we did, I should mention, we have wonderful parents. We do have a volunteer preparing mock-ups of this, landscape architectural drawings. We have to wait until our volunteers have the time to do it. Just
I know you were engaged in the neighborhood before that. I just think that since it's changed, it would be good to re-engage a little bit and make sure they're on board.
Especially after the project that just occurred there. I think the residents their awareness of the park is much higher right now, just given the improvements that were just made. So I know they've been wired in, and you know, you'll want to include the commissioner there as well, so he's aware of what the plan would be.
Is that Jake?
Yes, Jake Abel.
You talked to Jake about this one, or not yet?
The original plan we did, and we've been in touch about possibly the elimination of the infield, but not the completed plan as it stands now.
Okay. Thank
you. Were you also going to talk about Yankee and Emily Tunnell?
Yes.
Oh, okay.
Is that okay?
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. There's just a long pause there.
I apologize. I just want to make sure there are no more questions. Sorry about that. So at Tunnell Park, we're going to move on to that next. So Tunnell Park, we have permanent or temporary requests. We're not sure which. current request, and the initial request that is either temporary or permanent and more current is replacing the batting cages that have been eliminated in the course of preparation of the comfort station. So the area, the very top right-hand arrow here, you can actually see one of the batting cages right at the top of this picture. And I apologize for my inartful cutting off of the Google Earth, but that black rectangle that you see coming down on top of the red area, that's a batting cage pad with a temporary batting cage on top of it. That's not there today. Right now there is a regraded area that takes up that red area and the one next to it where the batting cages previously stood. We certainly would like the opportunity, once the area is available to us, to at minimum put those temporary batting cages up. This is our softball facility for most of our girls now play here, and certainly the older girls from ages 9 and up all play here. So they too, as I mentioned earlier in relation to Odorizio, batting cages are a very attractive and useful thing for both practices and games. We do sometimes share time where if our leagues aren't big enough, we have teams from Lower Merion coming in. So we do have teams from out of town. We want to be able to offer them the same kind of facilities they offer us. So those temporary batting cages that we've had in the past have worked out very well, but Sean had mentioned a few moments ago, we have had the occasional issue with vandalism of those cages, which has cost Little League some substantial amount of money. We have not had any trouble for almost the past year now, so things have gone much more favorably for us at Emlyn Tennell. But one way to address that possible problem going forward and to make the setup and takedown and the usability of the cages much better for our female players would be to do the same hanging cage system that I referenced earlier. What would that entail? It would entail poles on the far side of this, which is the SEPTA fence. So I don't know that that would be a substantial issue, but it would also entail poles 12 feet out from that aged fence there in order to hang the wires so that the cage would hang down. That would improve the quality of the batting cages, but again, we just need to have batting cages there. In our perfect world, the poles would be there permanently and the hanging cages would be taken down. But if that's a non-starter, we can keep using the same cages we've been using. And I suspect in either case, at least for this year, if that area becomes accessible to us in the near term, it will absolutely be temporary cages for now, because we won't have time to do anything else before the season starts. That's my
okay.
my first part of Emlyn Tennell.
Sorry. Okay. So go ahead and talk about the scoreboard.
Okay. So the scoreboards, we can keep this diagram up. So this is, I'd mentioned earlier, I would discuss whether it was temporary or permanent and whether it was exploratory or a current project. This is very exploratory. We had talked to the school board about this about 1.5 years or 2 years ago, that it would be something wonderful to offer to our softball players. The two questions over the years that we've received the most from our 900 plus families are, why don't the girls have a comfort station and why don't the girls have a scoreboard? So we had proposed a plan to the school board, very exploratory plan at the time, to possibly put scoreboards over where the new comfort station is going in. Scoreboards, the art of the scoreboard has improved drastically over the last few years. So at our most recent board meeting, we revisited that plan. And it's our view that although the school board felt that that's something we could and maybe should explore, putting it out by the fence line near the comfort station, we could do much smaller scoreboards, either 4x6 or 3x5, put them on top of the dugout. So this is what we would call the A field that you're looking at now. The blue arrow would be the third base dugout. We would run the scoreboard were it to go in right on top of the dugout, immediately along the front of the dugout, basically in parallel with it, which is also right in parallel with the fence line of the backstop, which does not show up very well here. We would do the same thing on the B field, which we'll see some pictures later. That would not impede any views from outside the park into the park, because in essence, on the A field, all neighbors would be looking at the razor's edge, other than the building, and I believe it's an office building that's to your right in this diagram. There's a parking lot. We'll see a picture from there later. And they currently are looking through the backstop. So instead, they would have I guess a 3-foot high or 4-foot high scoreboard there. We would also, as we've explored this, we can get any number of colors. We would match it to the color of the dugout to minimize the aesthetic impact on the park. The school board had referenced that they would very strongly urge us to not even ask for ads on the scoreboard. We would not. We would not pursue any ads.
Big thing. No banners, no ads.
It would
no
be
paid for by Bryn Mawr Trust.
Right.
It's Emlenton Park. It's a neighborhood. Sorry to interrupt.
Well, it's similar to what we did over at Radnor Memorial too. On
Okay.
that scoreboard.
Just, yeah,
I mean, it's a little larger than what the sizing was that you referenced. You know,
Right.
4x6 and the 3x5,
3x5.
but those don't have advertising.
Yeah, no,
Don't
like
represent
no,
them.
no.
It-
Yeah, like on the comfort station snack bar, like no advertising at all. I think is
Yeah, we would not.
important to the aesthetics to the neighborhood.
I would completely agree, and this would all be funded by Radnor Wayne Little League.
Okay.
We will take donations, but
Sure.
we would make clear to folks that you're not getting your name on anything. I should also mention the scoreboards that we are looking at, they don't make sounds, and they have a maximum 200-foot visibility, so they wouldn't be visible from outside the park. It's my assumption that there would be no use of the scoreboards after dusk, because it doesn't make much sense to play softball in the dark. As I mentioned earlier, scoreboards in this park would certainly improve the usability of the park. I have a daughter who plays in the park now. She's been playing there for the last 2 years. But as I mentioned earlier, I think it would make great strides towards, in conjunction with the comfort station, improving the equitable treatment of our players, both in softball and baseball. We've gotten so many positive comments on the comfort station that finally the girls are being put on equal footing with the boys. So we feel like that comfort station has gone a long way towards increasing our registrations, and that's a great thing. The more girls we can get playing sports, the better. So the specifics of this, Tammy, if you wouldn't mind going to the next slide, as I mentioned. So that's A. This is a view from approximately, it's that corner of the dugout where the scoreboard would go. You would be looking along the razor's edge of the scoreboard almost from here. So that would be the view that the Radnor House would see of the scoreboard. And when I say the razor's edge, it's in essence the skinny side of a big screen television. The edge of those scoreboards varies anywhere between 9 and 14 inches wide. So it would be 3 to 4 feet high, but the angle that would be viewable from this angle would only be 9 to 14 inches. Tammy, if you wouldn't mind going to the next slide then. So this is the view from standing on the hill at the fence line from Radnor House, looking down along that same razor's edge of where the scoreboard would go along that dugout. So this would be, if you were at ground level, not on the other side of the tree line. If you were on the Yankee side, this is what you would see.
Again, you'd be looking at it like this, right?
Yes, you're basically looking straight out from almost the middle of Radnor House.
And you said it was like 9 to 14 inches wide?
Wide, yes,
Okay.
on edge.
And it would sit right on the top here? Is
Um,
that how it would be mounted?
That would be the hope. We got to look into how we mount them. As I said, this is, and unfortunately we're exploratorily looking at this right now, if that's even a word.
Maybe
So
there are some other towns that have done that we could get a look at to see
Yes.
what that would look like.
there are. We've actually, both Lower Merion and Denver Stratford have offered to help us with this if we want to go further.
How about like Wendy? I mean, you'll remove them at the end.
I don't think these would be removable. I think these would be permanent. We could do removable ones, but I would have a much greater fear with the removable ones that the weather would impact
Yeah.
them than if we did something permanent.
So I mean, and I want to hear from the neighbors. I mean, I feel that I'm okay with it, if it doesn't.
Of course you are. Keep on going.
Keep going.
Keep on
And
going.
could we go one
Yeah,
more
so-
sorry.
Yeah, so I mean, I'm okay with it. I know that you would be investing a lot in the, in the park when it comes to batting cages and it comes to the scoreboards. We've invested a lot in the park when it comes to the comfort station. And I know that we've talked about it in the past, but I would also like to protect everybody and see about getting a camera. I don't necessarily know if it's going to stop anybody.
We're in the process
but I
of
know
doing
that
that as part of the
that's-
conversation
yeah.
development.
And it just again, because I'm going to have to take off soon. So there is no sound. Is that correct?
There is no sound
and
and
you're not. Sorry.
the lighting's not visible from
Okay.
more than 200 feet. So where this picture's taken,
Mhm.
even if the scoreboard is at an off angle, but even if you were looking head on at it, you wouldn't be able to really see it from this distance.
Okay. Is there any way to cover it up with maybe trees or something to cover the back of the? So, I guess you can't. It's only the razor. Okay, I'm looking at it the wrong way. I thought.
You'd be looking
So it'd be
at
the
it
third base,
this
not
way.
not the
Yes,
first base.
that's the
side.
third base dugout.
Okay, and then one more. Oh yeah. And you're not putting so there'd be no advertising on that fence or any fencing, and then you would not be putting an outfield fence in as well to separate to differentiate the fields.
And no lights either.
Pardon?
No lights either.
And no lights. Okay. You know my
That
thing.
rumor's been out there too.
I don't know. You all know how I feel
I've
about
said this
lights,
many
right?
times on the record. We will
Okay.
never, Radnor Wayne Little League will never put lights. at
Do you
Emlyn.
still have them in the
And no
warehouse?
cell towers.
Okay.
Not that I know of, honestly.
Oh, they are-
I've heard rumors that we
They're
have
there.
them, but
I have to take off. But so I have to take off.
No,
but
that's
thank
fine.
you. I'll definitely want to hear, and I'm sure you have plenty to say. I'll catch it on the flip side on YouTube.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks, everybody.
Tammy, can we go to the next slide?
Real quick, can I, since I guess I came in the middle of this, why wouldn't you pull the scoreboard back out towards where the shop is? Yeah, right.
Like out here?
You'll see in the next picture.
Oh, okay.
Foul lines.
So this is the view from the parking lot of that office building. The blue arrow is where it would go. So you'll note that to the extent they really want to look at the sky, it is basically going in the fence line currently because of the angle at which the dugout is. So more or less,
When you say they, you mean the people in the office park?
in the office part. Even
Quite frankly, I could
they,
care less what the people in the office
I would
park
suspect
Thank
they
you,
would.
Cliff.
about.
But we are,
Excuse me?
Thank you, Chris, for saying that.
we
I mean, I
are,
don't care whether they have a view or not. It's an office park.
we're trying very hard to not interfere with anybody's
No, I
view
understand.
of
Yeah.
anything.
All right.
Okay, I think,
But
So this is going to be obscure, I'm sorry.
So you've got the scoreboard on top of this dugout, where the only team, the team across is the only one that can see the scoreboard.
well, actually, anybody in the field will be able to see it,
But
the way the dugout lies. The fans on that side will be able to see it. The fans on this side will not be able to see it unless we tweak the angle of it back. But again, what we're trying to do is make the view of it so much the razor's edge that everyone can literally see every foot of that park that they can see now. They still will be able to see once those scoreboards go up.
Maybe we can Photoshop one in.
Absolutely.
Ultimately, just
Yeah.
to.
We've
Help
also,
with the
we have
different
volunteers who
angles.
are willing to do these drawings, but that may take even a little while longer than the film.
Yeah, I don't know why we do it.
I mean,
I mean,
it's
it
a
seems
park.
like you guys are doing whatever you can to
And
try and make Tanal equivalent to what the boys have over at Yankee, but do it in a way that's soft and considerate to all community participants and people that care about that park, making it the way that it works for them. So I appreciate the way you're kind of presenting it and talking about this.
Thank you. Tammy, if you want to go to the next slide, basically this is almost it. So this is the B field at Emlyn Tanal. This is the one tucked back in the far corner with the septic track. If you followed that arrow straight up through the tree line, you'd hit the septic track. This we would do the same thing. Now this is not the Razor's Edge, you'll note. This would be full on in this direction towards the Radnor house. But then if Tammy, you could go to the next slide. So this is what you would currently see. This is behind that third base dugout on the same corner on which it would go. So this is what you have to look at now, which is basically a bunch of trees when they're in bloom and a septic track. And then I think we have, yes, so one more. So this is from where that scoreboard would sit. And again, that one would be flush almost towards the Radnor house. But that is the view of the Radnor house from, I'm not quite tall enough, I need to be about another foot taller to be as high as the scoreboard would be. But that would be what the Radnor house would see of that scoreboard if the lighting were to get to them, because they will have the front face of the scoreboard in that direction on this field. But we felt like, given what the view of the park is behind that scoreboard, there's really nothing for the Radnor house to see back there anyway, so we wouldn't be impeding any view of the park with the one on B either. And that is what we wanted to discuss for the scoreboards at Edmonton L.
Okay. Any other questions?
The only comments that I would have, like I said, was that maybe just to get an example of maybe some towns that have actually mounted it, which I can put out something through NRPA, which is the National Recreation Parks Association, and just see if there's any examples of, I tried to Google it, so that's why I was on my phone, just to see if there were any examples of scoreboards mounted to dugouts. Like, I'm curious of that, and I'd be curious, based on your perhaps potential companies for the scoreboards, you know, maybe they've done installations on dugouts. Maybe there's a bracketing system that's already been pre-engineered that accommodates them. I don't know. Those would all be good conversations to have with Daktronics or whoever it is that you're talking with. I can't believe we're the first ones who've ever thought, oh, let's put a dugout on, or put a scoreboard on top of a dugout. So.
Well, we had asked Daktronics the prior plan, when the discussion was maybe they would be associated with the roof of the comfort station or behind the comfort station. And they were very clear that we had to be smaller than the 8x12 in order to mount it basically on the roof of a building. Because if you did one of that size, it becomes a wind sail and you might rip the roof of the building. So we're hoping that that was sort of an indication in the inverse that we need to do the smaller ones here, but again, we would want to do the smallest ones that you could see, at least from the outfield anyway, just to minimize the impact on the park.
Yeah, the only other suggestion that I would make is just to make sure that the roof is intact. So if this was something that, you know, this is a road that we walk down, I would want to make sure that that roof is in appropriate condition to be able to accommodate it. And if it's not, that improvement is made.
Yes. We have a couple volunteers actually who have talked about helping us with the roofs if we need to modify the upper portions of the dugouts, that we would basically replace that at our cost to accommodate the scoreboards if that's where the community and the board and the school district decides is the best place for them.
Yeah, because I'm not really sure what the condition of those.
I know what the condition of the roofs are. Terrible.
Are they shingles? Is that a shingle?
No, it's more like tar paper,
Okay.
and the kids, some of the preteens to teens spend quite a bit of time up on those roofs in the summer. So it's something you need to be aware of. They love to get up there and then they throw some of the surface off to the ground. So that would be one very serious question. How do you get electricity to those scoreboards?
There is electricity already on the A field, on the backstop of the A field. On the B field, we would run it, and we would pay for that. Our assumption would be we would run it along the walking path to the outside of the walking path in the ground.
Trenching, yeah, trenching.
Right.
Mary, do you want our comments now?
Well, we've got one. You wanted to talk about Enki too, right?
Yes.
And then we'll flip over to you guys.
So Enki, so this is Enki from Google Maps. So the first project that I'll talk about is represented by the right-hand arrow. The township had asked us this past season for any of those folks who've attended a game or have coached a game or have had children playing a game, a lot of foul balls go just past the edge of the backstop out onto Ivan Avenue, which you can see Ivan running there. So the township had asked us if we could look into solutions to try to eliminate at least the bulk of those foul balls. So what we came up with is a system they actually have at Harrington High, which is flagpoles that they use to raise a large net about 20 feet up in the air. The net is surprisingly see-through for the fact that it's a pretty sturdy net. So that was the conclusion that we came to, is that would be the best, most cost-effective system for us to address this. So that would be another one of these sort of combination current and exploratory. We haven't gone all the way down this path yet. First, we wanted to make sure that that solution would be acceptable to all parties. I know the neighbors have concerns about the baseballs that come out and often into their yards. I wouldn't want to provide a solution where we are putting up a large net that will at least somewhat modify the view into the park from the houses immediately adjacent on the other side of Ivan. So we wouldn't want to do anything like that unless all parties were on board with it. But we did want to tell this board that's the conclusion that we came to as to the best
On the net will go up at the beginning of the season and come down at the end of the season?
Yes, it would. I mean, obviously, Chris, it's on a flagpole, so if we really needed it to, we're going to have a hurricane, we would just take it down.
Not on a daily basis.
Right.
How far down the first base line would you go?
Yeah.
We could probably choose. So the nets come in various sizes. The one that we were looking at, I think, was 27 feet. So it basically would go all the way behind the first base dugout from the corner of the backstop, and it would extend, I think it's 4 feet past the end of that dugout. So
how high?
We could get them to go up to 30 feet high. I don't know. Part of it would depend on what the flagpoles are that we want to put in, because we obviously can't raise it higher than the flagpoles are. So that would be another thing we'd have to talk about, because the bigger the flagpole, the more intrusive it's going to be to get it in the ground in that area. And I know we've had questions in the past about utilities running in that area, et cetera. So I don't know if we put up a 35-foot flagpole, we might have to take up a huge area at the bottom where we got to dig out and do stuff, and we want to consider that, I would imagine. And then so of everything we're talking about today, by far the most exploratory is lights on Enki Beach. So this has been, I guess, the holy grail, I think, of Radnor Wayne Little League for generations. Every time we have a game that has to end because of darkness before the game is completed, and then either needs to be replayed or played another day, this issue arises. We understand that there may be some very specific limitations placed by the township in the near term on what the lights could be were they to go in at Enki Park. They would be, thank you. They would be highly directional, the lights that we are looking at, which means the light pollution would stray less than 15 feet outside of the targeted area. So basically the light would extend less than 15 feet outside of the field in any direction. There are no, as you can see from this picture, there are no residences within that range. The skate park is also well out that range. The building that you see right next to Enki Bay, or the series of buildings, is actually respectively the comfort station on the right, the middle one is a concrete shed, and the one on the immediate left is a wooden shed. So in that regard, we completely appreciate that there would need to be a discussion of curfew times, when the lights could be used, when they couldn't be used, and this would probably be more useful, at least from Little League's perspective, earlier in the season when it's getting dark every night at 5 of 7 and we're trying to start games at 6 or 6:15 and they almost never get finished. So it would be a big deal for us to be able to do something like this. As I say, this is by far the most exploratory thing that I'm talking about tonight. But again, in our efforts, just because in the past of the concerns that had been raised, that we're not mentioning things that we would really be interested in doing for the kids early enough, we figured we'll include this in our presentation tonight.
that's all yours, right?
Yes, that is everything we had to talk about. Thank you, everybody, for your attention.
As far as design of the lights, they would be set 4 posts strategically posted. Have you gone that far yet?
We have
Okay,
not.
okay.
Actually, we do. Matt Shaholsky, who is our baseball commissioner,
Yeah.
has had extensive discussions with a lighting company. He couldn't make it tonight, but he would know better than I.
Okay.
As is the case in my marriage, I'm best kept in the dark about most things. I do less damage that way.
I know that the folks wanted to engage in public participation, wanted to talk about some of this stuff, so why don't we have public participation on this now? And if we've got a few minutes after that, another agenda item we had that a lot of our board has already disappeared. I really wanted to have sort of a full discussion of this outdoor recreation article that Tammy found. So maybe we'll talk about it briefly because it looks like we've got some action that's coming up before our next meeting. So I wanted Tammy to be able to mention that. But so that's the order I propose we proceed in, and then I think we're finished probably for the night. But if you guys are ready to speak up.
Do you mind if I sit next to you?
Seat.
Between you and Howard?
Sure.
Okay, good evening. My name is Kim Cruz. I actually live at 70 Garrett Avenue. So I am right across the street from Tennell Park. So I see a lot of what is happening at the Comfort Station and what is happening at the park. Tennell Park is very much a community park. It is used 12 months a year. We are very aware of, and we are always engaged about what is happening at the park. Okay, so I took notes. Once again, the neighbors on Garrett Avenue were not contacted about any of the scoreboard or replacing the batting cages. The batting cage that is where the Comfort Station is right now actually blew over in June and July of 2019, creating quite a safety hazard. The first time it blew over, it was blamed on vandalism of kids in the neighborhood. The second time when it blew over, and I actually was contacted by the police at that one to see if I had seen anything that had happened, and I said, no, but we did have quite a windstorm last night. And the second time it blew over, we did have quite a windstorm the night before, and there were 2 trees that were actually directly in the path of the batting cage at the top that were also damaged. And the 2 trees were damaged and the batting cage got flipped over because it's not adequately tied down. Okay, so that's that one. One of the meetings last year, you said that you would reduce the size of the batting cage that was going to go back there because what was there were baseball size, I believe, and you only needed softball size. Okay, so that's that one. The walking path that is right along the track that's right along the field is currently damaged, so I want to make sure that any batting cage does not restrict the walking path. The walking path is actually used on a regular basis by the community. Daily by the community. And we want to make sure that it gets restored to the quarter-mile circumference that it is. All right, that was that one. The Tennell batting cages, you know, except for last year, they have not been removed at the end of the seasons. They've been left up for months after the seasons have been over. There are vines that grow all over them. They are not maintained. There are weeds that grow inside of them. They are left in such a state that the wildlife of the area gets actually caught in them. And we've tried on several occasions to actually get the birds that have gotten caught in there actually out of the cages. Sometimes a success, sometimes with not. Windstorm, leaf trail. The neighborhood has been opposed to lit scoreboards every time this has been brought up at Tennell. Every time it has been brought up at Tennell. Andrew, before he left, said he does not favor and he is opposed to a lit scoreboard. And on that picture, you may think it's a razor edge that's not going to impact the community, but I'm going to see both of them from my front door. My front door.
And Radnor House, the manager of Radnor House, told me we had lunch last Friday, and she said the tenants are saying absolutely not. This is a little neighborhood park.
You're worried about the dugout roofs. The dugouts themselves are cracked. They have The one on the third base side of Field A has a big crack where in between the pointing.
And
so it's
and the posts are not set properly. That dugout needs to be rebuilt.
And there have been at least 3 permanent scoreboards at Tennell Field. One of the remnants, the township just took down when they when they started building the comfort station. The bases of the other 2 are still at Tennell Field. The RWLL has not removed them. They're still in the ground. And then last year when Mr. McWilliams went before the school board, Susan Stern told him that that's not Tennell, that Tennell is governed by the Garrett Hill zoning, and that any signs that got put up there, they had to be compliance with the Garrett Hill zoning, and we have very, very strict requirements, and one of them is no internally lit signs. And also, she also said she would not favor advertising. It was a recorded meeting, so it's something that can easily be found up on the school board's website. I think that's it. Sarah, you can cover the trees.
And as an adjunct, it is wonderful we are getting a comfort station. It was put on the capital projects in 1998, and here we are in 2020, so it's wonderful. I could have wished that Shade Tree had weighed in and really looked at this, because when they ran the water line, they could have used a slit trench. But as it is, they used a piece of equipment that was at least at 4 feet wide. And we struggled, and actually it's Chanticleer that gave us all the landscaping at Emlyn and Tennell, because the township didn't want to at that time. And there are numerous trees that have been there for close to 20 years, which are damaged or are going to have to be taken out. And it, in effect, has damaged the look of our park from the front, and it didn't need to be that way. And those of us we have no street trees on Garrett Avenue, and these were our street trees. And I know we're losing one. I'm very fearful about the mature Jap maple, because they cut this deep, wide trench right under the drip line of the Jap maple, and at least one of the street trees is going. The trench was this far from the base, from the trunk of the tree. So I could have wished that there had been more thought to that as to the unintended consequences. And on the other side of the drive, there's sort of an island, and it has a nice sized Coosa dogwood now, and they dug a great big hole that's 3 feet from the trunk of the tree. So there may be quite a bit of tree damage when spring comes, and I don't know that anybody has considered how they're going to be replaced or how they're going to be paid for.
Sarah, do we know if that was consistent with any plans or diagrams or proposals or whatever was in the contract?
Never saw. I don't know, because we never saw the contract.
You know, was this something that, you know, should have been aware of because there was?
Would have, should have, Mary. I spoke with an engineer, actually volunteered me that it could have been a slit trench. And then the damage would have been like this, and it would have stayed away from it. So it's just another piece. And the other piece I want you to know is I learned about these potential scoreboards last Friday from Radnor House. So we in the neighborhood knew nothing. And it doesn't go over very well with our neighborhood. We want to keep it because you guys leave the end of June, early July. And then it's ours, and there's a little bit of soccer, and then it's ours until the following March. And literally, it is the open space for Garrett Avenue. And Radnor House, kids ride their tricycles, people walk. I used to be part of a group of 8 of us who walked every single morning at Emlyn, 6 days a week. it is our neighborhood park, and we're pretty fiercely defensive. I think you've got a safety issue if you put lights up on those dugouts, because I've seen those kids, preteens and early teens, they're having a fun, and I have spoken to them numerous times and said, why are you up there? Because it's fun. And I said, well, do you realize it may not be safe for you to be up there, and we would really appreciate for you to get down, and that doesn't go over very well with teenage boys. So I think you're cruising for a bruising if you put lights up there, and we don't really want digitally lit scoreboard. It's just the feeling of our neighborhood, because it's our park. I know it's your ball fields, but it's our park.
May I?
Yeah.
Can I address these issues? So first of all, just to address the comments about the neighbors not being contacted. First of all, this is a very preliminary discussion. Okay, this is just to get it in the light. There's no action being taken. There's no recommendations that we were looking for tonight from this board. This is a preliminary discussion just to get guidance from this board to say, is this something that we think we can start to entertain? Can we call the neighbors? Can we do a letter? Can we have Sean put it out on his Facebook or social media avenues so that we can now take the next step to get the neighbors out, to get the feeling of the sentiments of the neighborhood? Because I mean, I know we're hearing a snapshot from both of you that's, you know, representative of the neighborhood. I don't know that it is. Little League doesn't know that it is. This board doesn't know that. But until we have that recommendation from you guys to say, okay, like let's take it to the next step. Let's put it on our agenda again next month. You know, let's send an email out. Because Sarah, you know, like anytime these topics have come out, I've reached out to you. We've tried to keep you updated throughout the process of the Comfort Station development.
Well,
I reached out to the Radnor House last week.
And that's how
and they
we found out.
And they met with their board, and I had put a summary together of all the things that we wanted to talk about relative to the park. So I'm disappointed that they didn't reach back out to me or come to this meeting, because I invited them to come here and share their views.
I invited them to come too.
So I think we have a good enough rapport that you guys know that if this is going to another step where this is going to become, okay, you know, a little bit more of a formal, okay, let's really look at this, we're going to reach out to you. We're going to discuss this. So, especially after what happened during the Comfort Station discussions, especially after that, back in, what was that, you know, April of 2017 or 2018. So I just want to kind of clear the air about that. A couple things about hearing about like kids on the roof and stuff like that. Again, like I think we have a great rapport with you guys. It'd be great to hear those things that's going on. I've never heard that. And a police report was done on the issue that had happened with the batting cage. And our understanding based on that incident report was that was delinquent damage that was done over there. So, and I don't know, I'd have to go back and take a look at that police report and talk with the police department and see what ended up being the case. I know we tried to install a temporary camera at that point on the flagpole. I don't believe that captured anything subsequently because nothing had happened. Obviously, the intent going forward with the Comfort Station is that we will have surveillance on there so that we can get as good of a 360 view of the park as we can, so we can find out what's going on. So I think we're trying to be proactive about that. As far as the trees, again, that's another one. I mean, if was the tree damage or suspected tree damage brought forth to the township in any way? Did we have an opportunity to alert
the trees have been marked with X's to come out?
I think that's something that we want to know about.
That's an unintended consequence of maybe taking a broader look. Okay, we're going to do the Comfort Station. Now, how are we going to get the water line there?
Well, that was all part of the plan. So if there were any trees that were slated for removal as part of that, those were
further down now because the way they ran the line.
I think they had to run an alternative way. So we'll look
I don't
into
mind
that.
the alternative way, Tammy. It could have been done through a slit trench.
Sure.
Instead, they used, I don't know what you call it. It's not a front end loader.
Right.
It was a guy with a claw.
Right, and that's something I want to look into.
And it was at least 5 feet wide.
If there are damages that could have been prevented on behalf of the contractor, by all means, we'll go after them to either repair or replace
Well,
those
I think you
trees.
should.
So I think that's something that's really important for myself or Steve Norsini to know. And we'll take a closer look at all the trees and do an inventory of what's been removed, what's potentially been damaged. We'll work with the contractor to find that out, because I think that's really important, because sometimes there can be that disconnect with the contractor, and that's where we want to hold them accountable, especially when we have them captivated right now on the site. A couple of other things, just real quick, sorry, about the walking path and walking path damage. The walking path we knew all along was going to be rerouted.
It has to be rerouted.
So there might be a few feet short of the quarter-mile loop that ultimately ends up being as part of that. We'll take a look at that and just see, because I know that all along we knew that it was going to be cinched in slightly to be able to accommodate the grading that comes down now. So there's actually, if you go out there right now, there's like a stone pathway where it's going to be replaced. Which,
and I've walked it.
Yeah, it's a mud pit over there.
Yeah, it is because of the rain, absolutely. But it's inside the fencing, as you probably know, where the new pathway.
It's not inside the fencing.
It's not inside the fencing.
That is such a well-traveled park on a daily basis that because there's no walking path to get the people from the track in Tennelle, because the walking path used to go up to the driveway and they used to cross at the bridge. And so now they have to cross by the fence. And so there's mud outside of the fence because nothing was put in for consideration of the people how they were going to actually get out of the park or get into the park.
My only point is that the new rerouting of the pathway is within the construction fencing.
It's not totally, because I have walked the gravel path in order to continue to walk the trail. It's not all inside the fence.
We'll take a look at it, and again, those are all concerns like we want to know about, that way we can address them. You know, whether it's Public Works that helps, you know, put something together to complete that area, to make it passable at this point, you know, given everything that's going on. Again, these are all new things. I have to believe they'll probably be new to Steve as well.
Well, I can't believe that the township hasn't been inspecting it, and all they had to do was...
Our project manager has been on site.
Well, then they saw the trees marked with the X's and the trees that are down and the shrubbery which had to go, and it's fine because it was cherry laurel in the wrong place. There's no need to prune cherry laurel down to be boxes when that's not what cherry laurel does. And that's not your fault, it's the landscape architect who designed. But that's all been torn apart. But it's just an unintended consequence that heretofore on any park you're doing, take a closer look at the trees, because it wasn't necessary. That's the bottom.
Like I said, we will definitely take a closer look at that and report back to this board.
And the contractor, I spoke to the contractor and he basically blew me off.
And your project manager, he's not there all the time because there was nobody there the day that they were pounding Garrett Avenue for over 30 minutes with a backhoe trying to dig up the street to even get down to start digging the water line. And my house was shaking all the way down to the foundation. And my husband did call, and they were supposed to send out the inspector right away. And the thing is that when they actually, I gotta give them credit, they actually paved much better than anyone else has actually paved on the street when they cut into the street and fixed it. Except for they put the same macadam back into the sidewalk. And last week they decided to take the macadam out of the sidewalk, and then they just left it in 2 piles on either side of the hole in the sidewalk.
On the street?
On the sidewalk.
On the sidewalk.
So you basically, the sidewalk was, you know, nobody was really using that side of the sidewalk anyway, because the fence is right and blocks it off, so people had to get out of the street.
You have to walk in the street.
Yeah, to get across anyway. But it's still an eyesore, and I get to look at it every day.
And it's still there.
And it's still
We'll
there.
address that tomorrow. We'll look into that tomorrow.
Okay, thank you.
So the other thing too, though, with regards to maintenance, if there was ever any maintenance concerns about Little League with the dugouts, I never heard those either, and those would be things that we definitely would commit to want to address.
In the
with them.
past, and I can't remember who had your position, I had his phone number. And almost every time I would call him up and say, your equipment's back in those green boxes, but the doors are wide open. And I would assume that he was going to come down. I can't think of his name.
Steve Sherry, possibly?
No. Who was it?
Jim Riley?
Well, it was before Jim. And then I would call Jim Riley. And almost every time I would call and say, these doors are wide open, and that's just a invitation for kids to pull it all out and play their baseball, and whether they ever pick it up and put it back, I don't know. But the caretaking of Emlyn Tunnell has been less than favorable in the past. And there were years when the batting cages were never taken down.
May I speak?
And I'm sorry we're so rough on you.
From April 1st to November 1st, of every season since I've taken this job, I am in that park every day. I make sure it's clean. I personally pick up the trash. I met the officer there whose words were, posts don't bend themselves over fences, and they don't. Yes, that was vandalism both times. This year, those stakes, 18-inch stakes, drive every leg of those batting cages into the ground, all the way around. The only way they can get out is if someone pulls those legs out affirmatively. This year, we did not have any vandalism. We had 2 windstorms that destroyed half of our signs at Yankee Park. High winds, takes a lot of wind to rip those signs in half.
We had a lot of wind last summer.
Those cages at Tunnell went nowhere. Why? No one pulled them out of the ground and bent them over the fence. Our season runs officially from April 1st until the end of fall ball, which is November 1st. So I had 2 years ago personally gone over and taken those cages down because that's what the neighbors wanted. I took them down when folks expressed concern in June. I personally put them back up when they were needed again in the middle of July. I took them down again in the middle of August by myself and put them up again in September. Little League finds themselves and fancies ourselves co-residents of that park. That park means a lot to us too. We are not here to try to get fast ones by anyone. We were asked, based on past concerns, to try to bring these things at the earliest stage we could. We had a board meeting 10 days ago, and I am here tonight presenting our thoughts from that board meeting. The only other thing I could have done is found a time machine and come before we had the board meeting and discussed it.
Well,
my phone number is on the internet. You are both welcome to call me at any time.
And could you please tell me what your name is?
Sure. It's Tom McWilliams, which I believe I've said at every meeting that you both attended where we've discussed anything ever. Tom McWilliams.
And your phone number?
267-342-2389.
2389.
2389. If you don't get me, feel free to leave a message.
I will.
Make sure to indicate who you are.
I think that neither Kim nor I would have been here if Radnor House hadn't expressed their concerns to me over lunch last Friday. And I asked, before the commissioners' meeting, I asked Tammy. I had heard this, so I wanted to verify it with her.
As of Monday, though, just for the record, I mean, it was still up in the air as to whether or not Tom could make this meeting Thursday night.
Well,
as to
what I
whether or
wanted
not
to
this would end up on
verify
our
was
agenda.
what Radnor House
Right.
had told me.
Right.
I think if it'll help you at all, Emlyn Tunnell, Garrett Hill, I have been told by the last year by an upstanding gentleman who lives in Garrett Hill to my face, well, you know Garrett Hill is the Camden of Radnor Township. And we've been treated that way for many, many years. So we're a little defensive because of really poor treatment. And that was when Sean was maybe going to be the commissioner. So that was 2 years ago. I was told that Garrett Hill was the Camden of Radnor Township.
I certainly do not feel that way, nor does Radnor Wayne Little League. A large portion of our players come from that area, and I know I beat this drum a lot, but I have a daughter, and this means a lot to me. And we want both sexes treated
well. And I used to walk it more than I do now, because I got a little tired of walking around in circles. And I know from direct testimony that the girls didn't want to play because there was no place to go to the bathroom. And I've had a commissioner say to me, whose daughter was on the team, I would not drink anything for 3 hours before I come to Edmonton because I'm not going in that porta potty, and I get it. But know that, and I'm not running down our neighborhood, we have a lot of kids in the summer who have nothing to do, with both parents, no transportation to get anywhere, and they're mostly little boys, and they get into trouble because little boys do. I have 2 sons, so, and I think it helped Edmonton actually when they locked the gate of the fence down at the bottom of the, because the kids used to go there and smoke pot and beer, and they weren't old enough to be doing that. So that was an improvement when that gate was locked. But just know we're pretty fierce about it because we haven't been treated very well.
You should also keep in mind when you're looking at these whatever scoreboards, and one of the comments that somebody made, I guess it is 2 years now. I thought it was only just last year. But they said that one of the parents that was an RWL wasn't in favor of scoreboards because they barely have enough, manpower to do the little vinyl thing that they would hang over the fence. So it's like, who's going to be running a scoreboard? And the other thing to keep in mind is that crime, not vandalism from the little kids, but actual crime in our area is on the rise. So you might think it's vandalism of local kids, but where I live on Garrett Avenue. We have the pig and whistle right there. Yeah, I was burglarized. So we have a lot of access to that area. So I really don't think there are a lot of things that you could do to that park, but I don't think that electronic scoreboards in particular would be a good thing to do.
Just to be clear, we would absolutely recognize that we've got to put things on the front and back to protect the scoreboards from vandalism. We understand that. My children and I have spent a great deal of time playing in that park since they were little. So we get that. I will tell you, when I run into those boys, and we have run into them many times, I try to convince them to come play baseball. Doesn't always work, but it's worth a shot. So we think a big solution to that problem is do great things for the kids in our community, offer them great things at these parks that attract them to play those sports, and that will keep them out of trouble. That's our hope. That's why we're here. We're not here to try to do bad things.
From 30,000 feet, when the school ran after-school programs, a lot of kids in our neighborhood who had no way to get home. And so they don't participate because they don't know how to get there, and they have no way to come home. And unfortunately, often we're talking about the African-American kids, because we have a whole diverse population. Let's just be really honest about it.
We've tried very hard.
They need transportation to participate.
To allow both genders, baseball and softball. We're trying to get both sports played in Glenbrook and Tennell so that we can try to give those kids a place to play where they can easily get to and from.
Yeah.
We understand that there are concerns.
They need transportation or convenience.
We are not the enemy of your
I'm glad to hear that, because I think that's one of the reasons the kids get into trouble, because there's not enough to do.
Next time you see them getting in trouble, tell them to come play baseball. Tell them to give me a call.
They don't take
We'll
that
sign 'em
from
up.
women, thank you, particularly old women with gray hair. So, sorry to take your time.
Just, you know, what Sarah
And
was
thank
talking
you for
about.
listening.
This is the tree right at the street because it went, this sign is pulled out, was right here, because this is my driveway, and they were backing up their equipment into my driveway. So this is the tree that they're 18 inches from, and this is the tree that they actually cut into the drip line.
I'd like to have a copy of that. I would really appreciate it too. Thank you.
This is the view from, because this is the tree that they cut into the drip
Can
line.
I just
I'll
ask
give
a
it to
quick
you.
question? How long ago was it that that happened?
It was in January, because they didn't actually start doing anything until January 2nd.
Did you didn't notify anybody about that?
About cutting into it? Yeah, we called that day.
Who did you talk to?
John got the receptionist, and he got transferred to Steve Norzini.
Yeah.
And he was supposed to send the engineer or inspector out right away.
And they didn't, is what you're saying?
I have no idea whether or not they did it, but we did call.
And there was no follow-up, so, okay.
Not with us.
So, I mean, I want to follow up on those things. I mean, the Public Works Department, the Engineering Department, you guys know, is responsive. I mean, we may not be able to handle the problem, we might not have seen it coming, but we're going to address it. We're not going to ignore the phone call and not approach it. So I just want to have that opportunity.
By the time we saw it, the trench was dug. Was a little too late.
Right, and again, though, I think there's a consequence to
There
that,
might be.
to the contractor. I think that's really important.
I think
so
he should
we wanna
replace
have
all
an
the trees
opportunity
that
to address that.
has come down.
The problem, this is a dogwood? This is the dogwood?
No, that's the
maple,
Jap maple.
Japanese
That's the
maple.
fully mature Jap maple.
Yeah, it's been there. I mean, I've been in my house for, my husband, like
That
over
was-
25 years.
That was
and it was
Mrs. Walker's tree.
Yeah,
It's on
and it
her
was-
property, and I've been there for 38.
Yeah. It was the one tree that I was complaining about. Like, I didn't, the big ones in the back, they're nice shade trees for everybody. But that was the one that's the one climbing tree in the park.
Yeah.
That it'll be, a great loss to the park if we actually lose that tree. And yeah, you can have these pictures.
Okay, and I will speak with Steve tomorrow, and
Okay.
he will probably reach out to you and have a discussion and ask to meet on site just to take a review of everything, because I know he takes it very seriously, and if there's anything that we can do to, like I said, work with the contractor to try to make good on that, I think we want to do that.
Well, I know there's a Washington hawthorn that's now marked with an X. And one of the red maples, one of the 3 red maples, has street trees right along the front. Maybe there's
Who would have marked them with the X? Is that
somebody
Township?
came along
It
and
probably
said,
was it might have been John Hosbuck. I mean, he's the only one that marks
but he
trees.
wouldn't have
so-
done it until after the trench was dug. That's the issue.
Okay, well, we can involve him too, because I know he's been out at the site a couple of times.
Yeah, well, it's hard when you have no street trees to have your street trees taken down when something else could have been done to protect them. Sorry. And remember that Andrew Babson said, no lid. No lid. It just doesn't go in the park. Sorry.
Thank you. And thank you, Sarah. Thank you, Tom.
Thank you.
Poor Tom.
Tom volunteered.
That's right. And he is a volunteer.
I used to have
He really has a job too, right?
Yeah, I have a real job. I had an old boss who used to say that all the time.
Poor Tom.
Don't ever stick your head out of the foxhole. All we get for it is somebody's
Yeah,
shooting.
some of us know.
All right, thank you all.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, folks, it's late, but I didn't want to just postpone this item A under new business because I would have liked to have had a very extensive conversation about it because it's an interesting topic. But looks like Tammy will actually have something to report on it. We'll just do that very quickly and then we'll call it a night.
Because it goes back here.
Yeah, because I saw this.
Okay.
I saw that, but I just
All right.
didn't get the time.
Thank
And
you.
and that's just the other side of the tree. It's just so you can see how prominent it is.
Okay.
Thank you. You guys have a good night.
we're just gonna do that on really quick. Oh, I'm sorry, did you want to talk about this one?
The only thing I wanted to say about the article, which let's table it and talk about it next month.
Yeah, but I did want you to mention that there was something proactive that Tammy had initiated.
So the only thing I wanted to announce was that, so the school district is having a day of unplugging. It's gonna be on March 2nd, and there's a national unplugging campaign that has gone on, which I believe is the 7th and the 8th, but they're gonna honor it on March 2nd. So there is initiative by them that, you know, they're gonna plan a day of unplugging, and they're working together with lots of organizations in the township on this. So that actually it preceded the article, but it all ties in, because I think a lot of the things within the article sort of reference this lack of recreation because of screens and digital devices and whatnot. So all we wanted to do as a department was recognize that, you know, even though there's a national day of unplugging that the school district is looking to celebrate and to honor, we wanted to try to create a schedule of what it would look like if you had a healthy digital diet every day, and what that would be. Because we feel that's a really good tangible for parents to walk away from. You know, so you unplug on this day and you go back the next day and everybody sort of goes back to the same habits, you know, with their digital devices. And that's not what we want to see happen. We actually want to see people start to adapt a different diet where, you know, they start off their mornings perhaps where they make sure that the phones are perhaps all docked in a certain location that's not in the bedroom, or they're not using them as an alarm clock. Making sure that you establish dinner time as a time where we're together, we don't have digital devices at the kitchen table, sort of setting those guidelines and those rules, so that the days after unplugging, people can go on and try and adapt to a different lifestyle that starts to remove that dependency that has started to grow on devices. So, I mean, we can talk about it a little bit more next month, but it's something that we feel passionately about as a department. Obviously in response to the article and the study that was done, although I think those numbers don't really necessarily reflect Radnor Township. I think people do recreate. I think more than half of the people do recreate. So maybe we're a little bit more of an exception then.
Yeah,
maybe the study was somewhat flawed. I don't know, you know, we can look at that. But at the end of the day, I think it's, you know, about providing great opportunities that are equitable to everyone, so that, you know, we find ways to make sure we're reaching different populations throughout the township, but then also taking a standpoint of how can we be a catalyst as a department to try and get people to spend less time on their devices and more time looking to other areas and other outlets for satisfaction and pleasure.
Anyway, I think it's great that it's happening.
Yeah.
That's great, but I think it will be an interesting discussion. You know, honestly, I think Radnor does a fabulous job on making things available, and also in outreach to tell people that things are available. But there's always maybe something that we overlook,
Definitely.
or our constituency that we've overlooked or something. So it should be an interesting discussion, but it will keep until next month, because it's been a long night.
Definitely.
So there aren't too many of us left here, but let's have a motion to adjourn anyway. Anybody?
Motion to adjourn.
Second? All in favor?
Aye.
All right, let's go home.